Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the conversation. Tonight, I am Dom from Uncaped Mama and also from Parent Porch, where we are building a community to support parents in all stages of parenting and where you can come and have real talk conversations about all the things related to parenting. Today, I'm excited to have Elaine joining us. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, but we're going to have a conversation about parenting neurodiverse children and a way for you to connect even more to get all the resources you need for your children who are neurospicy, which Elaine and I just realized that we both like that term, but also just to make sure you have a way to connect with all of the offerings at Impact Parents. So, Elaine, I'm going to pass it over to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into our conversation.
Super. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me and having this conversation and for what you're doing with families and supporting parents. We are all about focusing on the parents. What we know at Impact Parents is when the change we want for our kids starts with us as parents. And yet a lot of parents feel really kind of guilty about that. And so we're right there with you. And we really want parents to understand that when we take care of ourselves, all boats rise, right? So
Yes.
I'm Elaine Taylor Klaus, as you said. I'm one of the co-founders of Impact Parents. It was originally Impact ADHD in the early years, and then we realized that parents are dealing with so many more issues than just ADHD. And so we talk about parenting complex kids. So we support parents, we support professionals, all who are trying to do a more conscious job of raising complex kids, and that's kids who struggle with life or learning or behavior or emotions or social issues, kids who are in some way or another in some aspects of their lives struggling and harder to parent than you might have expected they would be. So sometimes that's parenting complex kids, sometimes parenting kids in complex times, which we find ourselves in
Mm,
these days.
yeah.
And so Impact Parents is a website and a resource that way. We've got hundreds and hundreds of original blog articles. We've got 200 podcast episodes. So lots of original content with coaches and other experts, and parents telling their stories. And then we do programming for parents. A lot of what we do is free, newsletter, community, that kind of thing. And then we have training programs and group coaching and private coaching programs to really help parents understand their kids well enough to help them learn to manage themselves. And that's, in the world we're in, we're not parenting our kids the way in the world we were parented in, and it's different, and we got a lot to learn. So
Yeah.
thank you again for having us.
Yes, and thank you for that introduction. I think about I literally just made a video on my Uncaped Mama TikTok page the other day where I was thinking about discipline. And I was thinking about, are we raising obedient children or am I raising healthy adults? Because parenting, right, like doesn't end once they're no longer children. And so
No.
it was just a thought that I was having where it's like everything that I'm doing here leads to an adult, right? And I don't actually know if anything I'm trying and anything I'm doing is working until they become adults. And then I have to realize they still have choices as adults. And so, as you're talking about just like complex children, complex times, like all of that is so relevant and will continue to be relevant as the world is changing. I feel like probably even faster than it ever has.
More than ever.
And I just, yeah, I feel like this might be a timeless conversation
I
today.
believe so. I think it is. I shy away from the word discipline, because I
Mhm.
think it's an old school concept in a modern world. Like, when we were all raised, or a lot of people, certainly my age, but in previous generations, there was this sense of parent authority and teacher authority.
Mhm.
But our kids now have access to one of these things at a really early age that gives them access to the whole world. So their
Yes.
sense of agency is different. And so the work we do at Impact Parents is, so we're coaches, and it's about collaborative parenting and collaborative problem solving, because as you say, I don't want my kid to be obedient. I want my kid to be able to be a problem solver, because I want
Yes.
them to become an independent, capable adult. And
Yes.
so this is not about, are they going to get away with something or not, right? It's about, are
Yes.
they going to make the right decision whether I'm there or not, because they've learned how to become their own competent decision maker. And whether your
Yes.
kid's neurodiverse or not, I think
Yes.
that
Yes.
that is the most important thing we can do as parents, and that's
Yes.
really what our is all about.
I love it. You are speaking my language, so I love it. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
Um, let's jump in and let's understand the journey. So, what are some of the biggest challenges parents of neurospicy children face, and how do you and your coaching workshops and events help them build the confidence to overcome those obstacles?
Great. Well, that's a huge question, or a couple of huge
Mhm.
questions. So
Yes.
first, let's start with what are the parent problems parents are facing, right? And then how is it different if they're neurospicy kids? The problem that parents are facing, as I said, is that we're living in this world where don't see kids have a lot more exposure to the outside world at a very early age. And so that old time notion of authority, and you do it because I said so, and you can count on me to be the authority in your life, and I'm where you're going to get your information from. That world is gone. That ship has sailed. And so
Yes.
part of the challenge I think we face as parents is that from a pretty early age, our kids don't necessarily get the same information that we offer. And so we are in this different kind of dance with them in terms of communication. And and we have to hold their trust and then keep earning their trust, because it's we live in a world where it's really easy for them to be swayed in other directions. So the necessary connection that we have with our kids is harder, I think, for parents of this age, and all the more important because of the world that we're in. So the challenges are the same no matter what. I want my kid to brush their teeth and do their homework and go to bed, and we're all facing the same logistical challenges. But what's under the emotions and the information and the influences underneath those challenges are very different in this day and age. And then when you add neurodiversity into it, kids who struggle with life, learning, behavior, kids who may not process information in the same way, or who may be really overwhelmed by the volume of what's coming at them, or may not have the organization, the executive function skills to follow what the teacher's asking a second grader to do, that in our day or in my day, that might not have been done till 8th or 10th grade. Right, like, the expectations are
Mm,
way higher on
yeah.
kids, and their ability to follow through without more support is very different. And so what they need from us, particularly neurodiverse kids, is to understand where they are developmentally, because kids don't develop in a straight line. Kids develop in a very
No.
zigzag kind of a way. And so they may need more support in some area and less support in another. And we have to be the one that kind of reads the space, reads the tea leaves, and figures out when do we step in more and when do we back off some. And we have to do that without worrying about what our next door neighbor or our girlfriend or our sister-in-law or our mother is telling us we should be doing, right? Because we got to shed all those
Yes.
shoulds. And when I first started doing this work,
Yes.
what I realized, I had this epiphany. I was at a lecture. I had a very, very complex, my oldest kid had a lot of issues. And I was at a parenting lecture one night with a parent coach, with a writer whom I really liked. And her name was Wendy Mogul. She wrote a book called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee. This is going back a couple of decades. And I raised my hand and I said, she was talking about accountability. And I said, well, what if your kid has special needs? She said, well, then this doesn't apply to you. And I looked, I was stunned. It was like, "Well, if this doesn't apply to me, what does?" And but what was
Yeah.
amazing about it, Dom, is it gave me permission to say, "Okay, I gotta meet my kids where they are and stop trying to have them meet everybody else's expectations. I gotta figure out what's appropriate for them." And in my world, this kind of coach approach to parenting that we've acquired, developed, figured out, discovered, whatever you wanna call it, um, is exactly about that, about meeting our kids where they are and helping them grow from there, so that they're not buried under this mountain of expectations, but that we're really empowering them to play to their strengths and see what their capabilities are, and to grow in a really healthy direction with self-confidence, instead of with shame and stigma and all the other stuff that can come if they feel like they're constantly failing, which is exhausting for them and exhausting for us.
Yes.
Did I answer
That's I
did I
love
answer
that, and
both questions? I may have missed the second one.
No, you did, and it's helpful for me because my son was diagnosed with autism right before he
Okay.
turned 2, and he's 3 now, and my daughter is 2, but seemingly neurotypically developing for what you can tell for a 2-year-old, and I often talk about how for a long time I was trying to figure out how to help my son fit
Mhm.
in to all of these, like, social norms and things that don't even really make sense to me
Right.
as, as an adult, um, but also, like, why should he have to do that? Why can't he be excited about his french fries at a restaurant when the people at the table next to us are taking shots, celebrating a birthday, or watching a
Right.
football game? Like, why does he have to behave any different than a 2 or a 3-year-old would behave? Why do I found myself, I kept apologizing and I would go, "I'm sorry, he has autism." And then I was like, "I'm
Mm.
not doing that anymore because I'm actually not sorry that he has autism." Like, right? He deserves dignity and respect.
What
Um, I have to teach him accountability and all those things as well, and so I don't want to lower the expectations. It's about meeting his needs. Um, and
so
and that's really what any adult, any person
can I
wants
give you a
and
framework
needs.
for that? So
Sure.
kids with neurospicy kids and whatever their flavor of neurospicy is, okay, are typically about 3 to 5 years, 30% developmentally delayed in some areas of their development. It's not all. Like, a lot of these kids are bright, sharp as a tack. They're super wicked
Yeah.
smart, but they may have problems with
Yes.
sensory issues, or they may have problems with organizational or social. And so if we stop trying to say, well, they're 3, they should be able to, or they're 8, they should be able to, and we start looking at, remember that zigzag, right? If we start looking at where they are
Mhm.
developmentally for that skill and say, okay, well, this kid may be 8, but he's 8 going on 9 and or 10 in terms of reading and comprehension, and he's 8 going on 5 in terms of social development. Then we can set appropriate
Mhm.
expectations that meet him where he is, instead of trying to look at his age and deciding that that's supposed to mean something, because it really doesn't mean as much as we used to think it did.
I love that. I'm gonna use that because he's
We call it
brilliant.
taking
Like,
take the 3 to
so
5
smart, so
challenge,
scientific,
right?
yeah, so mechanical in his thinking. He has this physical strength. He's super cute. He's, like, silly and funny, and even though he's non-speaking, there are things that I absolutely know that he understands that we're saying because of how he reacts, right? Um,
I have to
but
tell you,
he definitely gets lots
I
of
have a dear
sensory.
friend who's got a nonverbal son on the spectrum who's now in his mid to late 20s, and what we've grown to understand, particularly as they started getting machines where they could communicate, is the challenge that this kid is facing in the world is actually that he's smarter than everybody else, not that he's not bright. And that capacity to
Yeah,
navigate an intelligence that profound, that's hard. It's hard, you
yeah.
know?
I just wanna be in his world. It
Right?
looks fun.
I love that.
I sometimes tell him, like, "Yep, it is loud in here. It probably does smell in here. Like, we're in the grocery store and we just went from one temperature to another very suddenly, and you don't like that, and I totally get it. And you know what? It doesn't make sense."
Beautiful.
You know?
You're taking a coach approach.
So putting myself in his
It
shoes is
is.
helpful.
Well, and what you're doing, and one of the first things I teach when parents ask me, or people in interviews ask me, if you could only teach parents one thing, what would it be? One, if it was just one thing, it'd be what you just said. It'd be acknowledge. Acknowledge what their experience is, no matter what it is, because they're not doing it to piss you off. They're not doing it to be difficult. They're experiencing what they're experiencing, and they're trying to communicate it to you. And if they can trust you to communicate it to you by you acknowledging and saying, well, I bet that is weird for you. I bet that is smelly. I bet that is whatever. That's going to give them safety. And that safety is what makes
Mhm.
them available to learn.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love that.
it's
Thank you
huge.
for that tip.
You just
Um,
modeled it beautifully.
so we did I this is, like, perfect for the next question that I had for you, which is, can you share 1 or 2 practical strategies that you've seen make the biggest difference for parents in supporting their neurodiverse
Okay, so I just
children?
gave you acknowledgement, right? Which is a great one. Let me give you
Yes.
context for it. The context for it is
Okay.
when you see a behavior that's unwanted, And it doesn't really matter what it is, at school, at home, with siblings, with parents, whatever. If you see a behavior that feels out of sync or it's not what you're looking for, stop before you react to their behavior. Ask yourself the question, is it naughty or neurological? Is what's going on naughty,
Mm.
or is there another potential explanation for that behavior? Maybe it's neurological, maybe it's metabolic. I mean, maybe they're hungry, they're hangry, tired. Like, what could be leading to that behavior? Before you react because they're being rude, disrespectful, not following directions, fill in the blank, right? Demanding, like, there's so many labels that we could give to judge a behavior that because we don't want it, because 'cause we're tired, because it's the end of our day, whatever. And if we can ask ourselves, "Okay, what's underneath that behavior? Is it naughty? Are they really being naughty here?" Sometimes they are, but pretty rarely, actually. Or is there
Yeah.
something else going on? And is he really being rude, or is he having a really hard time being respectful right now? Those are not the same thing. Now, it may sound the same, it may come out as "I hate you, mommy," which, is the sign of a good parent sometimes, right?
Yes.
Sometimes, but you have to look at the underlying motivation, what's leading to that behavior.
I like that. I think those are great tips. And for me, I think that works for anyone. I think we can like approach adults in the same way. Like what's going on here, and taking a second. I've learned that even taking a second at the end of my day where my child does something to meet a need, or they have a meltdown. My son was having a meltdown, and we couldn't figure out if he was in pain, like what was going on. Ultimately, he was tired. I but I was also tired. I was in pain, of having back pain that day, and I was just trying to hurry up and get through the stuff so I could get to the night routine. And I paused
Pause.
and I took a deep
Ooh,
breath,
that's important.
and I walked over to him and I said, "What's going on, buddy?" And I kind of looked at him. Okay, you're ready to get up out of your chair, and then you look in his eyes. He's
Mhm.
exhausted. He was exhausted, and I said, "You know what? Me too. Do you want to go to bed early?" And he followed me to the bed, and we went to bed early.
Nice.
I asked my mom to hang with my daughter. I'm like, "Can you put her
We
in
are
bed
done.
in an hour? Because it's early. We're going to bed early because we both needed it." And we went to bed.
Beautiful.
And he stopped crying as soon as he saw us approach the bed, and so, I love that,
Yeah, it is
because
a
and
hard
it
thing
affirmed me because
to
sometimes I don't know if
understand,
I'm
to
making the
read
right
what
decision, like
yeah. I think we
oh, keep going.
lost you there for a minute. What I was gonna say is it's hard to kind of read the space, like you're saying, and to be willing to pivot, to shift, to change the plan to meet the kid where they are instead of where you want them to be. And ultimately, all of parenting is about learning how to meet them where they are instead of where you want them to be. We got to let go of the kid we thought we were going to have, or we wanted to have, or our mom wanted us to have, or so that we can raise a kid we've got. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about this upcoming summit. You are having, the 8th annual I need to make sure I get it right. So, you're having the, 8th annual Parenting ADHD Now
Yes.
Summit. Tell me about that. I think this sounds incredible for parents. What can attendees expect? How will this event empower them to better support their children?
Awesome. So it's there are a lot of summits available online these days, and they're great. What's different is that we actually host it live. And so we are live, real time interviewing each expert. We do about 5 or 6 a day. It's 3 days in a row. And then after each expert interview, we pause, to your point, and we do a coaching debrief. So the expert leaves, and then we stay on for another 10, 15 minutes, and we kind of talk about it a little bit and help parents come to their insights and awareness so that after each interview, you get a chance to process through, figure out what you're learning from it, what your takeaways are. And then we take a break because we all need a brain break. And then we come back in 15 minutes later. So it's like 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, February 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Okay.
But they're live, and so that you can interact with the experts on chat. and you can talk to Diane and me after each one to talk about what you're learning. And then for people who buy the package, there's a package of all the recordings, and it's half price through the event. We're going to do a special live session on Friday with Diane and me. That's an open Q&A to answer all the questions that people have. But it's just a chance for you to interact with like 21 leading experts. And I've got this amazing doctor who's a sleep expert, and I've got someone from Common Sense Media talking about digital issues. And I've got
Love it.
a psychologist named Samantha Hugh from the UK who's an expert on women and ADHD and girls and ADHD. And so there are all these different experts who you've probably never heard of before, but who are the real thought leaders out there who are really making a difference and really educating communities where they live. And I spent a lot of time curating it, pulling together, getting the voices. There's somebody on organizing. There's like anything you think you might want to talk about, twice exceptional kids, autism, like any teaching, teachers, education, there are all these different topics so that you can really have a half an hour in each conversation to really tune in to what that topic is about. Take a few minutes to kind of debrief and figure out what you learned from it before you go into the next conversation. So it's really cool structure, and and they're amazing experts. I'm so excited for these conversations. My favorite.
It sounds amazing. I love the
Yeah.
structure. Everyone, if you're like, okay, where do I sign up? It's impactparents.com/porch. That is where you can go register. Um, this sounds like it's for
It's
everyone.
really for
Like you mentioned, teachers, educators, doctors,
professionals of
parents.
all kinds.
It doesn't matter if your child is neurodiverse or not. It sounds like
And
it's for
also
everyone.
all ages, because whether your kids are, preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, or even older. I mean, we do a lot of work. We have coaching groups for parents of young adults as well. So we cover the whole age span because it's not about the age of the kids, it's about the parents and about the adults who are supporting these
Yes,
kids. And so our focus really is on helping you as an adult, whatever your role is in relation to these kids, get the skills that you need to be able to really empower these kids to take charge of their own lives because they really have capacity. These kids have so much more capacity than people give them credit for. And
yes,
when we can play to that strength and
yes.
help them figure out how to manage the challenges, it's magic. It's really extraordinary who they can become.
I love that. So parents of all ages, grandparents join, aunties, godparents, uncles, grandpa, everyone. If you're just I think if you're even just
Mm,
curious, like if you're a person who's like, I don't know that I want children, join too. I think that you can be a better
yeah.
advocate for yourself and for other people when you're just in spaces where you get a chance to learn. And I love the fact that then after you get to kind of process it and soak it up with folks, take a break, let some more processing come in while you like rest your brain before you jump into the next one. It sounds
It's a
amazing.
bunch of
Um,
authentic
so I hope
conversations with really thoughtful people. And, my daughter-in-law said to me years ago when she started reading my book, she said, "I think I'm using it to parent myself." And your point, like
yes.
this really all of us are adults trying to figure out what it really means to be adults. And this coach approach and these conversations really help us slow down and pause and think about consciously, how do I want to be with this part of my life or in this relationship or in this dynamic? So you're right, it really does speak to everyone. And they're so inspiring.
I love it. I'm excited about it. Um, I'm excited about it. It sounds amazing. Before we wrap up our conversation, I want to ask you about community and connection, especially because of how intentionally you created this like summit experience. How important is it for parents to connect with others on a similar journey? And how does your organization foster that sense of community through your programming?
It's a beautiful question. You cannot overemphasize how important community is. In fact, if you look at the guidelines for complex kids in terms of what's recommended treatment, part of what's recommended treatment for kids with ADHD, autism, these kinds of issues, is for the parents to get training in a community where they can get feedback from an expert. And so it's not just training, but it's training in a community of peers because what the research has shown is that when you get connected with a community of peers, and I hear this from parents in our community all the time, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one having this
Mhm.
experience. I thought I was the only one whose kids were melting down like this. I thought I was the only one whose 8-year-old was still wetting the bed. I thought I was the only one whose kid was fighting back, was pushing back, was being so, like, dysregulated. Whatever the issues are that you're facing as a parent, I 1,000% guarantee you there's not just one, but there are many other parents out there who are dealing with what you're dealing with. And when you come to these environments and you get into community, you realize you're not alone, and that it just reduces your stress and improves your confidence so much that allows you to go back and be with your kids in a healthier, more constructive, competent way. It's really amazing what community can do. And so we're like you are at the porch. We are all about community, and we have online communities, and we have coaching groups, and like we do all kinds of things to foster community. I have parents who have met in our groups who have then met each other in person and gone to conferences together. I mean, all kinds of ways that we foster community because we know how important it is.
I love that. Perfect way to end the conversation because at Parent Porch, that's exactly what we're doing. Building a community where you can get to know other people, know that you are not alone, hear and connect with experts like you in this format, and find resources so that you're not alone. We can figure this out together, and ultimately, we're just building relationships across different households to try and do this the best way that we can. So, um, thank you for joining me today. This was an amazing conversation. I think we could probably talk 10 more times and talk about so many things. And I just appreciate the dialogue. Super excited about the summit, you all. It is starting on February 4th. So make sure that you go to impactparents.com/porch, get signed up. Um, and then yeah, share that resource. Bring a friend
Yeah,
to the
share
summit. Like, bring someone else so that we can build community together. You can build community and get connected with Elaine and such a beautiful organization. Diane is amazing as well. So I wanted to make sure I give that shout out. Thank you so much for joining me today. Also, make sure you like and subscribe and share this content to stay up to date on any of our videos that come, our podcasts, and all of our other guests and experts. Again, thank you so much, Elaine, for joining me
it.
today. I wish you all the best. I hope that this is an amazing summit, that it blows your mind, and that it's even better than you've planned for it to be. I'm excited to check it out myself, and we'll definitely be sharing with
Thank you.
parents.
Thanks for having me very much.